I came across the short story while I was editing Weekend, and I did kind of see this as like a bookend kind of story, really. I do see them very kind of similar in many ways. I think one is about two people trying to understand their identity and who they are through the beginnings of a relationship, and this one is about, obviously, a long-term relationship and how people can understand who they are and what they want from a long-term relationship, and how kind of fragile both those things can be, the beginning of something and the possible end of something.
Now, the actors in this movie, my gosh, I mean, you've never worked with actors quite of this caliber and stature before. I'm talking about Tom and Charlotte, of course. How did you get those two involved? Was it just a case of them seeing your previous film and wanting to work with you, or was it the script that drew them into the project?
It was a lot of begging, basically. I finished the script, and I don't write with people in mind because you just never know if you're going to get them, and it's just too kind of, I don't know, terrifying to write with people in mind in case you're going to be disappointed when they say no. So we finished the script, and we sent it to Charlotte very quickly. It was always our intention to cast the female lead first, obviously, because, you know, she is very much front and center of the film. It's her perspective. And I didn't even want to think about who would go alongside her until the female role had been cast. So I sent it to Charlotte, and I sent a copy of Weekend, and I sent the script and a letter just, you know, saying why I wanted her to do it and how wonderful I thought she was. And then we didn't...
Was it handwritten?
No, it was typed.
Okay.
That's bad. Yeah.
That's okay.
I should handwrite in future. And then I was in LA, I was editing, and she just called me up, and I was in the hotel, and she was like, "Hey, it's Charlotte Rampling here." And I was like, "Oh, God." And we had a long conversation for like an hour and a half, just talking about, you know, what I wanted it to be and what she wanted it to be. And then at the end of the conversation, she said yes. And she said she'd love to do it. And then I started kind of talking with her about who I thought would be good as the male lead. And Tom was one of the people that we both thought would be fantastic for it, because he has kind of certain qualities, I think, as an actor that some of those like men of that generation don't have. He has like a real kind of sensitivity and a kind of vulnerability. And I think a lot of those older actors don't necessarily possess that, and I think Tom does, and that kind of made sense to me within this relationship. So we sent it to Tom. I sent him Weekend. He didn't watch Weekend. He still hasn't watched it. Refuses to watch it. He started it and he said, "I can't understand what anyone's saying. They're just like mumbling, and I don't understand what it is with young actors, and they're mumbling."
They don't mumble.
They do a little bit.
A little bit.
But you know, he's from the theatre. He likes a bit of enunciation, and Tom said yes as well. And then, you know, that was it really. It was like we had them both on board.
The thing that I find so fascinating about the film, I've interviewed you before about the picture, is that the fact that you don't do a rehearsal process. And these two had actually never worked together on screen before. They once appeared in the same film together. I forget the name of that film. Do you remember?
Yeah, Night in Lisbon, I think.
Night in Lisbon, okay.
Yeah.
They were in that together, but they didn't share any scenes together. I totally bought them as a couple that had been together for 45 years. Otherwise, your film obviously wouldn't have worked. How did they go about fostering that relationship?
Well, I think to start with, it is good actors. So I think they knew that going into it, you know, they had to make the audience believe that they liked each other and that their relationship had gone into that kind of comfortable zone that relationships, I think, go into after a while, you know. But we didn't rehearse because I don't like rehearsing. I find that, I don't know, it doesn't do anything for me, and I like the spontaneity that you get in the moment. And Charlotte doesn't rehearse either. She's like, "I'm not rehearsing, so don't ask me." So I didn't ask her.
I'm sure Tom loves to, though, because
Tom loves it. He's a huge believer in rehearsal. So I think it was a bit harder for him because there was no rehearsal time. But what I did was I spent like 3 days with Charlotte and then 3 days with Tom, and we just talked about everything. Like my process, you know, directing is usually, you know, about the stuff you do before you get to set rather than what you do on set. So it was about just us all understanding what it is we're trying to do, what it is we want everything to say, what we want the character to be. And then once you get to that stage, it's quite, I wouldn't say simple, but you've done the hard work. And then we turned up on set. I think we had one morning when we read through the script, and they had like a cup of coffee, the two of them together by themselves, and that was it. Yeah, but we, you know, it was a very small, intimate crew, and they lived in like a little hotel with their like rooms backing up against each other, and they were just the only people in this hotel, the two of them. So they, you know, got friendly very, very quickly. But it's also just chemistry is something that comes from good acting and the right, you know, story, I suppose, that makes sense.
And you also shot this film chronologically, so that no doubt helped with that. What went into that choice? Did you shoot weekend chronologically? I mean, obviously in looking you can't do that.
I try to shoot everything, even looking, like when we can, when people allow me to. I will try and always shoot it in order. And lots of ADs get furious with me because obviously it's complicated. And this film was complicated to shoot in order because you're upstairs in a bedroom, and normally you would do all of those scenes together. But I'm like, no, got to go downstairs now. It's got to be nighttime now, and all that kind of thing. So it was complicated, but I think it just does, when you're trying to do something very subtle and you're trying to see those changes develop as you're making the film, for me, you have to shoot in order. I can't see another way to do it. And something will come up in a scene, Charlotte will do something, or Tom will do something, or something will appear in the moment that you didn't expect. And I want to be shooting the next scene the next day, so I know what it is that we've done. And I always think that it's why, for me, a lot of films, there feels like a slight disconnect as you go through the film, and I think it partly maybe because of that. And also the way my brain works, I just want to see it happen in order and feel real to me so I can kind of, guide it as needs be.
Now, you said you were scared to reach out to Charlotte at first, when she finally signed on, and Tom for that matter. Were you intimidated about working with them day to day?
Not really. I mean, the truth is, I think any actor, even if you've done however much work you've done, when you start a new project, it's a new project. And I think the thing that I realized, that first day on set, we were all nervous. They were just as nervous as I was, And I think in many ways that's really helpful. Like, I think you bond in those beginning moments of a film set, and, you kind of gang together. And, what I love about filmmaking is that you feel like a little team, and it's like you against the world. And I think it's very important that the actors are brought into that process with you, so it's you and your crew, and everybody feels like you're in it together. And then there's nothing to be nervous about, because if you mess up, you mess up, and if you don't mess up, you don't mess up, and you're there together doing it together. So it wasn't intimidating.
How do you get inside the mindset of characters like this? I mean, I'm not that age, but I believed these characters to be who they were on screen. How did you go about that? Did you talk to any elders in your family? Did you
just went to an old person's home? No, I kind of very early on, I thought, people kept saying when I was coming up with the story, they were like, how are you going to do it? You're not an old person, as if old people are so different from younger people that you can't relate to them. But I just didn't even think about it as I was writing. It's like, I don't believe that you change that fundamentally. I think the core of who you are is probably set quite early on in life anyway. And so you keep like changing and evolving, but your key fears and emotions and doubts, I think, stay the same. So I try to write it with that in mind. How would I feel? I felt huge amount of sympathy for both of these characters. I could understand what both of them were feeling and going through, and why they would feel kind of jealous and then distraught. And I understand those things, so I didn't really worry about it. And then when I gave it to Charlotte and Tom, they were just pleased that they felt like it felt truthful to their experience of being their age. And I think it was that just scripts usually in films about old people just seem to forget that an old person is still asking the big questions. They're still like trying to figure stuff out. It's not as if you get to the age of 50 and like, well, that's it, everything's fine now, the end. Yeah. Just wait for death. Like, it's not what happens. Yeah. So I tried not to kind of worry about it too much, and
And films also tend to forget that, older people are also sexual people. They're sexual beings. They like to have sex. Your film has a sex scene. Can you talk about that? I mean, did you want to, make a statement, or were you just...
No, I mean, I think, sex in relationships is incredibly important. And I think what sex is in a relationship, more than just having sex, is to reconnect with your partner in a moment and say, do you know what? I still like you and you still like me, and look, we still want to be together. I think that's what sex is. So it plays a very, very important function. And that doesn't matter if it's like once a week or like once a year, whatever it is, it has an important function. And I think for these two, in this moment, they really were reaching out for each other. They wanted to reconnect. And I think that, for me, I think everything is so fragile, our understanding of everything and ourselves and our relationships. And I think that in that moment when they have sex, if it had gone well, it might have been the end of the film. Like, in many respects, they would have reconnected. They might have like lay down and gone, do you know what? He might have gone, I'm sorry. Look, I can't believe I'm not, thinking about how you're thinking in the situation. And they might have talked. But the sadness is, for me, there's lots of moments in this when they could nearly reconnect and they can't in those moments because it's too kind of complicated or painful or whatever it is for both of them. And they were both fine doing the sex. In fact, the sex scene for the actors, Charlotte, even though she's done a lot of them, doesn't like them. She's like, why do I? No, of course I don't like them. Tom had never done one, and he was so excited. It was like his favorite day on set, and he was like, you know, that beating of his chest wasn't in the script, and he really just was so excited. Oh, wow. And then he had, you know, the underpants were chosen. We wanted him to wear those underpants, and he was like, I should just take them off. I should just be naked here. And I'm like, we'll see everything. And he's like, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, I think if we're going to have sex, I should be naked. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Really, you can keep them on. And Charlotte was like, keep them on. We do not want to see that.